Have you ever felt the uneasiness of having something you owned taken from you? Something that, no matter how insignificant it may have appeared to someone else, meant so much more to you. Maybe it was something that was customized to your liking or built piece by piece. Maybe it was handed down from a previous generation or a person near and dear to your heart. Maybe it took you saving from a number of paychecks, which meant dealing with a number of rude customers or overbearing supervisors or showing up on days you would have called out. Or perhaps you don't own it per se. Maybe it's something you've poured time into and developed for years. This is something that I myself and people all across America are all too familiar with. I've most recently experienced this over the past few days as I begin to write this a day after my seemingly insignificant 2001 Chevy Suburban was found stripped inside and out after being stolen 2 nights prior. I'm sure the 12-inch kicker subs along with the 2 amps needed to provide the type of bass that the previous owner desired is what the thieves found attractive. Just a few days prior, I arrived home 3 in the afternoon with Reason's new album Porches creating vibrations throughout the neighborhood. That's hard to go unnoticed. I love that album, by the way. Other than the fact that I owned it outright, I could care less about that truck. I've only owned it for 2 years. Just needing something to transport my family back and forth after I gave my Ford Transit van back to Capital One after I no longer could afford the $691 payments on the back end of the pandemic shutdown. The sound system was sold with the truck simply because the previous owner didn't want to take the time to rip it out when I offered to buy it. The listing price was $4,900. 46 without the sound system. I offered 42. But there were other things in that truck. They say they're just material things, but are they really? It took me years to build my tool collection. Not because there's this big list of specialty tools that I've always wanted to have, but because I've performed so many tasks that made me wish that I had a tool available to make that task easier. After I would exert the energy and sweat and become frustrated and finally breathe a sigh of relief from being able to get that part off, I'd go research, sometimes not even having a clue of what this tool would be called. And somewhere in the worlds of Amazon and Home Depot, Lowe's and AutoZone, I'd find or stumble upon a Craftsman this, a DeWalt that, a Milwaukee this, a Klein that, a whole lot of Duralast this and that, a Torque this, an Impact that. It was knowing what it took to complete a task without having that tool that made acquiring it a priority and having it invaluable. Well over $1,000 of metal and rubber and sometimes plastic, bent into shapes that are nameless, consisting of nuts and springs and gaskets and bearings, greased both by the manufacturer and the spilling of oils, grease and lubes and fluids pouring directly onto it or being rubbed on from the excess on my nylon gloves that I wore to keep the same fluids from getting underneath my fingernails. All of them kept in the back of my truck out of convenience. So that when I received that call for help or seen someone stranded on the side of the highway or experienced a mechanical failure myself, I would already be in position to help if that was the vehicle I was driving. Or I'd already be in a position to just pull up, switch out vehicles without having to go and retrieve something if I was driving one of my other 2 vehicles. Some of those tools being one of the few things I kept belonging to my older brother, deceased now nearly a decade, and sentimental to me because had I gotten into the trade while he was alive, he certainly would have passed them down to help me get my electrical collection started. But even in the midst of me feeling like I've been violated, I have to deal with reality. And the reality is that everything I had taken from me had a price value and can and will indeed be replaced. The memories of those hard jobs and tools are still present. Some draw laughs on me thinking of why I even went about it the way I did. I can carry on the sentiment of buying the same brand of channies that my brother bought and still keep him with me in spirit. I just had around $7,000 of items stolen from me, but somehow I'm still the lucky one. I remember seeing a story years back of a U-Haul that was stolen. An entire home worth of items were taken from someone. And what I remember about this story is how the person that was victimized stated that the suspects could have everything. All they wanted back was the urn that contained the ashes of their loved one. That has no dollar value. But this is America. Don't get caught slipping now. Theft has coincided with violence since the birth of this nation, and long before that, if we're being honest. The native tribes of this land came to this realization of experiences first. The stolen, sold, then resold African would meet this pairing on the back end. There is no reparation that can compensate for years and years and years and years and years and years of bondage. You can't replace stolen freedom. You can't atone for breaking a lineage that connects a person to the beginning of time. That's true identity theft. Stolen when you broke that bond by separating that man from that woman, then selling their children to separate masters than their mothers. The stolen wombs that subsequently fertilized the foreign seed, with that man looking down, holding strange fruit indeed. The stolen youth, the stolen intellectual property, the stolen technologies that the world was delayed in seeing or has yet to see because that idea died with the body of that African who was struck by that unnumbered lash or that shotgun blast, the crack the rope made when it constricted his neck, or her wrists and ankles when her body made the splash. That shark water, yeah, will give the next one's flesh a slash. Ring the dinner bells, the blood will alert the whole pack. And we toast to St. Pat with Irish whiskey in a glass as if the Irish ain't delete us in mass to steal our position in New York's caste system. But they did that to a people whose self-worth was as absent as baseball in January. That would not have happened to a people who knew who they were. They may not have descended from a king. They may be of a great warrior tribe, a great hunting people, a village of persons whose mastery of craft was something to marvel over, a dignified people indeed. It's sad watching men return to a society that passed them by. They have no sense of the times that have passed. As they transition from an environment they should have never known, but their innocence was stolen. Prison for the innocent has to be the closest equivalent to hell on earth. Our children are stolen today. A public education system whose mission is excellence, but are fine leaving them behind. When they're made to think less of themselves, that's stolen dignity. They're taken from hospitals, taken from parks, taken as they walk home from school. Our women are taken on the way home from work or school or the grocery store. The milk is still in the bag cold. A bag is what the perpetrators are after. That's a new car or a home, a Gucci belt, some foams, a gold rope and a phone full of numbers of women whose attention was stolen. They want that bag. So they charge John a fee for the time it would take for him to go in and take, and take, and take, and take, and take, and take. And she's tired. They take, and take, and take, take, and take. And she's weak, and they take, they take, they take. She's sick, they take. She's hurt, they take, they take, they take, they take. She's took, and they take, and they. Haven't we had enough taken from us? When will we come together and stop being taken for this ride?